Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. I wanted to get Frank Gaffney on, our friend from the Center for Security Policy in Washington, D.C., after what happened in New York City today, the 9th vehicle attack that has been tied to the Islamic State. And this one took the lives of 8 people in Lower Manhattan. 12 people at least have gone to the hospital after this attack using a vehicle, and a man who jumped out at the end of the attack when the vehicle was so badly damaged from crashing into both people and other vehicles that it couldn't move any longer, and he began shouting Allahu Akbar. The police shot and wounded him, and he's now in police custody. And Frank Gaffney joins me now. Frank, what should we make of things like this?
Well, I'm reasonably sure that we'll be told by the smart people, authorities and otherwise, that this isn't terrorism. This has nothing to do with jihadism, that we can't figure out what the motives of the individual are and so on. But what it tells anybody with a lick of sense, Lars, is that we're dealing once again with an act of violence perpetrated against innocent people by someone who, in all likelihood, embraces what Andy McCarthy calls Sharia supremacism. And unfortunately, I don't think it's hard to penetrate that by just the simple facts that you've laid out. And more to the point, I think that it is incumbent upon us to stop pretending this isn't as obvious as it is, and that the nature of the danger that it poses to us is as easily defined as it can be. And it's not to say that there aren't people who engage in violence who don't have that as their impulse, Sharia supremacism. It isn't to say that all Muslims embrace Sharia supremacism. It isn't to say it's the only problem in the world. It's just to say that, as we have talked about now for more times than you or I care to think about, that certainly seems to be what's going on here, and we've got to start defining the problem accurately if we have any hope of preventing an awful lot more of us from dying at their hands.
Hey, Frank, tell me this. I wanted to switch gears a bit because I had planned to have you on to talk about whether or not Robert Mueller, the special counsel, has been compromised by some of the information we've heard about Hillary Clinton and some of the other things that have been going on that apparently happened during his watch as FBI director. And now he's leading this Trump investigation. And it seems to me that he's got a hard conflict there, doesn't he?
Seems that way to me, too. Lars, there are 2 Mueller investigations worthy of note at the moment. The first preceded the 2016 election by some years, 5 years, I think 6. It happened while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and the FBI, under Robert Mueller, then its director, was investigating what sure looked to them like criminal activity, kickbacks and other corrupt activities, many of them having as a common denominator a transaction that Hillary Clinton was helping to push through the United States government, specifically the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or better known as CFIUS, to sell 20% of our uranium stocks to the Russians. And Robert Mueller was presumably intimately familiar with that very sensitive investigation. I have to believe that Eric Holder, his boss, the then Attorney General of the United States, was also aware of it. Quite possibly a number of others in the news, notably Rod Rosenstein, at the time the U.S. Attorney in Maryland, and now the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. All of these people were involved in this first investigation. They seem to be complicit in covering it up. The transaction went forward even though there was a lot of reason to believe this was a very bad idea. And now they're all involved in a second investigation. The second investigation, of course, involving Donald Trump and his campaign and allegations that there was collusion with the Russians and so on. But that first investigation has, at least until now, gotten precious little attention. And I think, as you say, Lars, it's high time we start focusing on it, what they knew, when they knew it, what they did, and what they're doing now, and how they could possibly do what they're doing now without having really a major conflict of interest.
Well, Frank, it just seems to me that, and here's the case I'd make. One, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State for Barack Obama, who promised the Russians more flexibility and delivered, and didn't do much that was meaningful when they went into Ukraine, and didn't do much that was meaningful when they went into Syria, and did the uranium deal that put Russia in ownership of 20% of America's uranium reserves through a deal that had to be signed off by Obama and Clinton, and they did it, and Clinton appears to have benefited from it to the tune of millions of dollars to her foundation and some money to her husband. $145 million, yeah, precise. You're right, and $500,000 to her husband to give a token 20-minute speech. Then during the campaign, this woman who screamed loud and long about Donald Trump's ties to the Russians was out hiring Fusion GPS, an outfit that had done Oppo research on behalf of the Russians, and she hires them through a law firm so she can keep plausible deniability. So she's hiring a Russian-linked Oppo research outfit to cook up a dossier on Donald Trump to try to throw the election in her favor. It didn't work, but she tried. And the dossier, which we found out to be mostly fake, was supposedly from a lot of it was based around Russia. So the real Russia investigation, it seems to me, ought to be of Hillary Clinton and her ties to Vladimir Putin and the monies that she and her family have received.
I think that's going to start in earnest on Capitol Hill in the next few days.
Yeah, but is Mueller going to do it?
He's not, and I don't think he could conceivably do it. I think it has to be handled by somebody who doesn't have his conflicts of interest, as I said, another prosecutor presumably. But here's the trouble: the Congress has let this thing fester for a year or so, as more and more evidence of it is accumulated, of course, over time. But the leadership of Congress, the Republican leadership of Congress, whether that's Paul Ryan in the House or Mitch McConnell in the Senate, has been derelict in the extreme. They've not allowed committees of jurisdiction to review this stuff. We now have an informant, a confidential informant who's now been ungagged so he can begin telling what he knows about this Uranium One deal, as it's called. And I think this is the beginning of the undoing, at last, of the Clinton machine.
Let's hope. Frank Gaffney is the founder and president of the Center for Security Policy. Frank, we always appreciate your time.